Okay. We asked 5 questions in the mind. What were those 5 questions? It's not fair to the people who are here to get stuck with that and the people who are slovenly and sleeping in or whatever don't, but that's the way it goes. Life's not fair.
I don't believe I was here for that.
So that's because we're doing it, because we have to know the questions. First question, why does it say Veata tetzave? It should say tetzave b'nei Yisrael. Why is the emphasis on Veata tetzave? Strange language. Right? The second question, I've said the content of those words are very strange, because it seems to be indicating that Moshe is the mitzvah, which he is not, and Kadosh Boruch is the mitzvah. Third question.
Why give oil to Moshe when it's the one's lighting the menorah?
Beautiful. Why would you bring the oil to Moshe when Aaron is the one who lights the menorah? Fourth question.
Why does it say Kassis Lama'or rather than Kassis the Ha'ir?
Beautiful. It says Kassis Lama'or, that the Shemen Zayazach is Kassis Lama'or, crushed as a luminary. Why doesn't it say crushed to give light, to illuminate? A verb as opposed to a noun. And the fifth question?
Well, why does it say it's a constant light, but then it follows back saying it only burns from night to day?
Right. The next pasuk after this one, it says La Loisner Tamid. Should I say it in a croaky voice like you? You're doing a very good job with your croaky voice. Mm-hmm. Is that a morning voice, or have you got a cough?
It is a short night sleep voice.
Morning voice. That's good. So the last question was, in this pasuk it says La alois ner tamid, that there should be a constant light. And the next pasuk it says that you light the menorah mi'erev ad boker, you light it from the evening until the morning. So it's not constant. It goes out in the morning, you light it again. Okay, those are the 5 questions. The first 4 questions have already been answered in the mind. In Ois Beis, the Rebbe answered the first 3 questions. What does it mean, Veata tetzave, that you, Moshe, connect the Jewish people to Ein Sof? That's Veata tetzave, tzava miloshen chibur, connecting. You connect the Jewish people to Ein Sof. That's what the Rebbe taught us in Ois Beis. As a result, in the end of Ois Beis, the Rebbe told us, as a result of that, Moshe himself is elevated. The Jewish people bring to Moshe something that elevates him, and that's v'yikwei lecha shemen zayazach, that the Jewish people bring the oil to Moshe. They bring to Moshe, and the lashon of the Rebbe was tosafes oros, additional light to Moshe. So we answered the first 3 questions. That was Ois Aleph and Beis. And Ois Gimel, the Rebbe explains the meaning of Raya Mehemna. 2 pshatim in Raya Mehemna. Roya Ne'eman, the faithful shepherd, the shepherd of faith. Right? And what's the word? The focus in this mind was completely on the second pshat, the shepherd of faith. And what does that mean? Every single Jew is a ma'amin ben ma'amin. We have a power of the soul, and one of the powers of the soul is the power of emunah. So what does it mean that Moshe connects us to the Eibishter and is the Raya Mehemna, the shepherd of our faith? Moshe brings that emunah into Pnimius. Because the emunah mitzad itself can be what's called makif. It doesn't necessarily resonate in my conscious reality. And Moshe is the one that brings it into Pnimius. Right? And in Ois Gimel, the Rebbe said that he quoted the Zohar, there's a hispashtus of Moshe in every generation, so this relates to the Moshe of every generation. And the Rebbe showed that also, that's a Zohar. The Rebbe showed that also in Nigla, Mordechai B'dorei Moshe B'dorei, because the Medrash says, Mordechai in his generation is like Moshe in his generation, because what did Mordechai do? He brought about a very powerful conscious connection to Emunah by virtue of bringing the Jewish people to a state of Mesiras Nefesh at the time of Purim. Okay, so that was the first 3 oisias. At the end of Ois Gimel, the Rebbe asked, what's the connection of the idea of Kassis Lama'or, the crushedness of Golus will bring to a revelation of the Ma'or, the etzim of the neshama, the essence of the soul, the luminary, not the light of the soul, but the essence of the soul, the luminary of the soul, the source of the light of the soul. What's the connection between that idea, which is the fourth question? We answered the fourth question also, why it says Kasis Lama'or, because the crushedness of Gullus brings about a revelation of the essence of the soul. How is that connected to the idea that Moshe nourishes our emunah? How are those two connected? Mitzad echad, Moshe Rabbeinu brings the emunah into Pnimius. Mitzad sheni, we said the crushedness of Gullus brings about a revelation of the most powerful expression of emunah. So what's the connection between those two? Right? This is the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe brings about that connection. How? Why? What's the pshat in the connection of those two? Right? That's the last lines in Gimel. The tzarich lahavin, a shaykhis, the relevance, the perish, the explanation, b'kosis l'ma'or, in Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, l'mavur, to that which is explained by Maimer lifnei, before this, after explaining that Moshe is the Raya Me'emna and brings about internalization of our emunah, then the Friedrich Rebbe explains the union of kosis l'ma'or. What's the connection between those two, and why does it come afterwards? Now, they seem to be two completely different ideas. They're both connected to the notion of emunah being b'panemius, but they're two completely different expressions of that, it seems. Right? Or it's Daled, the Rebbe explains the whole Indian of Purim. Right? The Chiddush of Purim. What's the Chiddush of Purim? Why was the Kabbalah Satar at Purim greater than the Kabbalah Satar at any other time, meaning specifically Matan Torah? Why was the completion of Kabbalah Satar dafka at Purim and not at Matan Torah?
Serious nefesh.
The Mesiris Nefesh at the time of Purim, right? Which was facilitated by Mordechai Yehudi, right? Which the Rebbe says is Meisher Shabadar. Okay. So now, at the end of Daled, the Rebbe mentions some things that are important to see again, so we understand what we're doing in the mind, right? Okay, so let's just see the end of Daled before we go further. Then we're going to review what we saw yesterday, and then we can go further. Right? Everybody should spend some time in Night Seder reviewing the Maimer. But L'cha'ura, yesh loymar. Shapedish b'kosis lamar. The explanation of the words kosis lamar, which means what? Shal yedei kosis, by virtue of the crushedness of Gullus. Nishbar v'nitka, they're broken and downtrodden. Megim lamar, a Jew comes to the ma'or. Jew turns to the Eibush in a very, very powerful way. Ubir al zeh, this is an explanation for the fact, shebezmana gezeder dafka, right, that at the time of the gezerah specifically, ba'u l'mesiris nefesh, they came to a state of mesiris nefesh ba'ifin aliyah on the highest level. That's simple pshat in kosis lamar. Ki mesiris nefesh hu mitzad etzem in the neshama shalamayla migilui, because mesiris nefesh comes from the essence of the soul, which is beyond revelation, beyond the revealed levels of the soul. Okay, ma'or. The ma'or, the luminary. Mimena nimsa or. That's the source of the or, but it isn't the or. And we know what that is. Essence, not gilui. Val yedei shahayu az b'matzav the kosis, and by virtue of the fact that they were then in a state of kosis, crushedness, nishbar v'nitke, nizgal etzem and neshama, ma'or. So what was revealed, etzem and neshama. Aval, mihemshich, now again, we have to understand that the reason we're reading this again is to understand what the Rebbe is doing with the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer. Because if we don't remember this, then we have, okay, very nice word, good, beautiful little thing. Maybe I can say it over at the Shabbos table, but I don't understand the Maimer. And the idea is to learn the Maimer, not to just, have some nice little thing that's inspirational and okay, fine, I feel good. Okay. Aval, the Rebbe asks, Mihemshich v'seder in yonim ba'mayim. This is what took us to Ois Hey, which we learned yesterday. From the order of things in the mind. From the Friedrich Rebbe. And what is that order? The Rebbe doesn't expect us to remember. Baruch Hashem, he's going to explain it. And what is that order? Shapedish b'kosis lamar. That the explanation of the notion of kosis lamar, that the crushedness of Gullus brings about a revelation of etzem and neshama, which spurs a person to a state of mesiris nefesh. But that comes la'achareya inyan, after the inyan of Raya Mehemna, after the Rebbe explained already, the Friedrich Rebbe in his mind explained already the inyan of Raya Mehemna, that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who connects the Jewish people to the Eibishter and brings their emunah into Pnimius. Mashma, the inyan kosis lamar shayach gam lazeh, that the whole inyan of kosis lamar is also relevant to the fact Shemesha Zan and Farnes Amuna, if Mesha is the one who nourishes the Amuna, Shetir B'Pnimius. Okay, and again, we ask again. We saw an embryonic expression of that at Tzarech Lahavin, the end of Gimel, and now the Rebbe says it again at the end of Daled. What's the connection between Kosis Lama'or and Moshe Rabbeinu? Kosis Lama'or, the Metzias of Gullus. The Gullus is a disaster, and then it brings out, unfortunately, and this is what Chassidus explains this in many places. One of the things the Eibishter likes about Gullus, so to speak, is the Mesiras Nefesh of the Jewish people. He's very impressed by how we relate to disaster. I think the Jewish people have been, most of them. There's been a little pocket of people that have been, I'm just venting now, more disgusting than they usually are in the last year and a half. But the vast majority of the Jewish people in this country have shown unbelievable resolve in the face of just a level of depravity and evil that is just beyond anybody's imagination. Right? You couldn't make this stuff up. Okay, and what's the Jews' response? Well, they use toilet paper for a kippah. They make kiddush on water in Gaza. They fast on Yom Kippur because even though they aren't getting food anyway, but they fast on Yom Kippur. These are people who live on left-wing kibbutzim, that were so-called anti-religious and were involved in the peace movement in this country. Okay, who are those people really? Underneath all of that facade of all of the schmutz, who are they really? Yidden, who have an unbelievably powerful relationship with the Eibishter. And it always showed up, and it's really quite astounding. Okay, so now what has that got to do with Moshe Rabbeinu exactly? At that point, that seemed to have to do with the idea of kosis, that they were in a state of crushedness, very difficult situation, and what was their response? Not to be mad at God, but to connect to God. It's really interesting. Amazing, incredible. See the power of Yidden. These are the stories coming out are like mamish, like stories of the Chassidim of the Rebbe Rashab in Siberia. These are unbelievable. And these are people who never, if you asked them to find a Rashi on Chumash, they probably couldn't find it. Because that's a Yid. That's what a Yid is. Yeah.
You see the one guy who's like, I've never been in a religious day in my life, but my first day I got in there, I started praying Shabbat Israel 2 times a day. Then he said there's an unreal, unimaginable connection in such a dark place to Hashem. He's like, you don't understand. Yeah.
They're all saying it's just astounding.
One of them found the Dvar Malchus from one of the soldiers that left it there.
Yeah.
He's like, I wanted to return it. Like there was a name on it, so he posted it online.
Wow.
One of the girls learned how to sing Shalom Aleichem in Arabic because if they couldn't sing in Hebrew, so she learned how to sing it in Arabic.
So the stories they're beyond belief. They're passionate beyond belief. So you see B'muchash, what a Yid is about. So then what's Moshe got to do with that? That's basically Rebbe's question. Why is that a hemshech to the Rebbe's explanation of Raya Mehemna? Continuation. No? Why is that? Interesting question. Not that they're both not amazing things. What does Moshe do? He brings them into the communities. Good. What does Golas do? Brings about a revelation of Etzem and Neshama. Good. Okay. But what have they got to do with each other? Let's see. So now, it's Hay, which we saw yesterday. The Rebbe explained the advantage of Emunah, that there are 2 different sources of Emunah in the Jewish people. Right? Mazli Chazi, which is the level of your neshama that is right now in Eilam Atzilus, which the Rebbe does not call, but we will, Chaya Shebenefesh, right? For whatever reason, he just doesn't say it. Chaya Shebenefesh, okay. And that level is a source of that. If somebody could bring that makif into Panemius, so then that would be very, very beneficial. And then there's another level, another source of our emunah, which is Etzem and Neshama. All right, and then the Rebbe explained the difference between those. Mazli Chazi is based on a siba, a cause. Something happens so that I'm connected to Elokus. What is that? I see Elokus, right? So that connection is less powerful than the essential connection, because the essential connection is a function of who I am and not something that happened to me, right? And that's the level that's unbreakable. Now, we mentioned yesterday that in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about these two levels of neshama, though he hints at them. He even hints at etzem in neshama by virtue of the fact that he mentions that a Jew cannot separate from the Eibishter. If the Rebbe says he doesn't, eino roitze ve'eino yochel. That's the language of the Alter Rebbe. He doesn't want, and he's not able. He doesn't want to separate from the Eibishter. That comes from Chaya Shabbat. He isn't able to separate from the Eibishter. That comes from Yechida Shabbat. Right now, the Alter Rebbe doesn't ever mention those levels of neshama and doesn't talk about it in Tanya. Tanya is all about nefesh, ruach, neshama. Right? That being said, there's a hint to it, and that hint is that idea that a Jew doesn't want and isn't able to be separate from Elokus. And where does that come from? That only comes from Chaya and Yechida. Want, Chaya. Not able, Yechida. Okay. And yesterday we talked about the three different levels of, the three different aspects of the upper realms relating to the lower realms, right? We'll go over that again to make sure that we've got that, because that's important, and then we can go further, right? The first level is hislavshus, right? That the upper level is clothed in the lower level. What's the advantage of that? One word.
Makif.
That's the opposite of that.
Unbelievable unity?
Unity, beautiful. Achdus. They're one, they are one. What's the disadvantage? The higher level of light isn't revealed in all of its purity and all of its in its fullest form, because it has to be diminished in order to be clothed in the Kli. Okay, so there's an advantage and a disadvantage, like most things in reality, right? Okay, Seder. So that's Hislapshus, which the Rebbe doesn't talk about here, because that's not our issue here. We're not talking about Hislapshus, we're talking about two different levels of transcendent reality in our mind, Chaya and Yechida, Nefesh. Okay. When Sevev is revealed below, when that level of Lamaila is revealed below, so what's the advantage of that?
It's an expression of, it's not mitumtam, it's
True
not,
expression of the
No,
other.
excuse me, is in the middle of talking. That
it's an
what?
expression of what's above without any filters.
Yeah, fair. In other words, there's a true expression of the infinite reality of the godly light. True. What's the disadvantage?
That we are bittul.
The lower realm is completely bottled. There is no lower realm. It's completely annihilated by the revelation of that infinite state of being. Finite has a hard time existing in the face of infinite. Just as infinite has a hard time existing in the state of finite. Right? Infinite has to be processed very, very, very powerfully in order to have any relationship with finite. That's Islavshus. Infinite in its unadulterated form will be Mavatal, the Lamata.
This is when Sovev is revealed down below in Lamata?
Yeah. So, yes. Even though we have to appreciate the fact when we say Sevev is revealed down below, basically what it does is be Mavatal, the existence of the down below.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, that's right, 100%. Okay? And so that'll be somehow a reality of Chaya Shabbat being Nimshach Lamata. Right? Then there's Etzem. When Etzem is revealed below, what's the advantage of that?
Gives chayas.
Gives Chayas. Etzem gives Chayas. And there's a state of unity. They're one, but the Lamata is not both. There's both advantages. Why? Because Etzem is a state of being. Right? And what is the state of being of the Lamata? Exactly the same as the state of being of the Lamaila. Right? There's no difference. What is it that ultimately vitalizes the lower realms? That's Elokus. It's all Him. So if there's a revelation of Etzem above, so then that's not a revelation of some sort of powerful infinite reality. It's a revelation of an essential state of vitality, which is the state of vitality that vitalizes the lower realm. So they're in a state of unity, but there's an unbelievably powerful revelation of Elokus in that lower state, Etzem.
What makes
so
Etzem?
That's when Etzem and the Shama is revealed below, so the person doesn't experience a state of hit alut, of elevation beyond the physical world. The person expresses his innate and essential connection to godliness within the context of his reality in the lower world. He's not interested in spiritual experience. He's interested in godliness. Spiritual experience, he's not experiencing physicality. Godliness, physical is as godly as spiritual. Or as ungodly as spiritual can be. Spiritual can also be godly. Spiritual's not good. Depends what spirituality you're talking about. Avodah Zarah is spiritual, destroys the world as much as murder and incest, which are pretty physical.
So how is etzem higher than mazli chazi?
There's no comparison. What's Mazli Chazi? I don't translate it. What is Mazli Chazi? Define it. One word, short little 3-letter word in Hebrew. What is Mazli Chazi? No, that's etzem. Or. It's or. Yeah, it's okay. It's also maki, but it's or. Light. Light is not essential existence. Light exists only by virtue of the fact that it has a source in something higher than it. So therefore, it doesn't have absolute existence. It only exists by virtue of the fact that something else exists, which is its source.
And that would
Why is there something called sunlight?
Because the sun exists.
Because there's a sun. Sunlight doesn't have absolute existence. The sun. Now the sun also doesn't have absolute existence because Boruch created it. But within the relationship of the two of them, what exists? The sun. And everything else is just an expression of that existence. It has no essential existence. Okay, so to godly light, Mazli Chazi, any level of godly light, the highest level of godly light imaginable, or Ein Sof Shelifnei Atzimtzum, that level of godly light, relative to Atzmus, relative to the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is referred to in Chassidus. The Rebbe Shab explains it in the Shvuas Maimer, in Samach Vav. That is referred to as ayin, non-existence. Why is it ayin? Because relative to Etzem, it doesn't exist. Because Etzem has a level of existence that's completely and totally beyond anything imaginable in light. Because what does Etzem have that light doesn't have? Existence by virtue of itself. It has no source, it just is. Which is something we can't understand. Okay, Beseda, that's all. You don't have to understand it for it to be true.
Chaya is Etzem?
No! Absolutely not.
I know. I said
Absolutely
Chaya.
not.
I know.
Chaya is a level of God, a level of light of the neshama called the level of neshama that exists right now while you and I are here. There's a level of your neshama sitting there in Eilam Atzilus having a very good time.
Doesn't Mazli Chazi, can you say that Mazli Chazi refers to that level of the neshama? That
Chaya.
level of Chaya?
Yeah.
That's what Moshe said.
That's what I said.
I thought you said Atzmus.
No, he said Chaya.
You said chaya is
you
etzem.
said-
You said chaya is
You
etzem.
said Chaya is Etzem. That's what you said. Didn't you just say that? Is Chaya Etzem? That's what you just said.
Okay.
That's what I heard in Rafi. I don't know. Okay, say it.
Okay.
No, Chaya is not Etzem. Whatever you said is true, and Mashiach's coming
He
faster.
asked what Mazli Chazi is, and I said it's Chaya. I just said Chaya, and then you said no, that's Etzem. We can.
No, Mazli Chaya is not. Mazli Chaya is not
recorded,
Etzem.
right? Yeah, it's recorded.
But we're certainly. I'm not going backwards. You guys want to look at it here? Minute 23 and 28 seconds right now. So find it about minute 22. Right? Okay. So again. Whoa! Let's make sure we understand this. Don't worry. I'm not surprised that it's difficult. Chaya shebenefesh is a power of the soul. In this mimer, it's not being called that. It's called Mazli Chazi, the level of the soul that exists in Eilam Atzilus while you and I are down here. That level of the soul sees Elokus and has a very, very powerful connection to Elokus. There's a higher level of the soul, the essence of the soul, and those two are incomparable. Right? There's one is an absolute state of being. The other is a state that exists. Okay, beautiful. It's amazing and it's incredible, but in no way, shape, or form can it be compared to the level of Etzem. Etzem, the essence of the soul is that level of your soul which is mushrash, rooted in the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and is for all intents and purposes indistinguishable from Him. Chelik elokam imal mamish, a piece of godliness. Mamish. Okay. What's the difference between Etzem and Gilui? Etzem is an essential state of being. Gilui is a state of revealed reality. What are you revealing? You're revealing a source. The definition of light is that it comes from a source. Therefore, if I see light, what do I know? There's something beyond the light giving the light existence. It's called the source of light. So if I look outside and I see light shining on the wall across from my window, I know, oh, sun's up. Right? I don't see the sun. I know the sun's up. Why? Well, there's light here. And light doesn't exist. Sun exists. So it must be the sun's around. Because without the sun, there's no light. Without light, there's a sun. Sun doesn't, if the sun had Bechira Chavshis, which it doesn't, but could the sun theoretically decide not to give light? Of course. Why not? Again, the sun we know can't. Okay, but theoretically, the sun. I'm not giving light today. Why? I don't give light. What's light got to do with him? Etzem. Could Etzem decide not to be revealed? The essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Could Etzem decide not to be revealed? Absolutely. Yes. What's revelation got to do with Etzem? Right? Okay, but Etzem decides to be revealed, and you and I call that light. Right? That's what you and I call it. It's very nice of God to do that, because then there's an us, and we like being us. Sometimes too much.
So it's the Islavshus that the light would Veata. That's darkness.
That's not Islavshus.
I'm saying.
That's not Islavshus. There's no bittul in Islavshus. There's bittul in Sevev, Makif.
No, I'm saying exactly. I'm saying when the light comes.
What do you mean exactly? You just said two terms that in the context of what we've been talking about are contradictory. So that's what I just pointed out. So you can't say that's what I'm saying.
That is
black is white. Right.
Okay.
Black's white.
The light that when the light comes down, it mivatel something, right? What is it mivatel?
No. What light?
The light of Mazli Chazi.
Okay. We're not going there. We're not going there. Okay? Don't worry about the bittul of Mazli Chazi. Okay? So we said there's two different sources of emunah. Mazli Chazi, which is a level of very, very powerful soul light, and the level of etzim. Right? The Rebbe explained the advantage of etzim. Okay, that's what we saw yesterday. Right? Okay, so let's see the little paragraph al pizeh, and then we'll start Oizvav. Al pizeh yishlavar. Kesher in yonim sheba maimah. Al pizeh. We can explain the connection of these things in the maimah, because we asked the question, why does Kosis Lamar come after Raya Mehemna? What's the connection of those two? Sha'inyan de Kosis Lamar ba behemshech labir the inyan de Raya Mehemna. We saw this yesterday. That which Mesha nourishes the Amunah. And what is that nourishment? Shatia b'pnimius, that should be part of our conscious reality. What's the ultimate expression of that? Mesha megales etzem in the shama. Mesha reveals etzem in the shama, the essence of the soul. Shalamayla mi mazli chazi, which is beyond the level of mazli chazi. And what's that? The ma'or, the luminary, shalamayla mi or. That is beyond or. That mem is a preposition, right? From light, not ma'or. It's not a noun. Umasha kosiv kosis lamar, and that's what it says. Kosis lamar, mavar ba maimer, and is explained in the maimer. Shebichdei lagil lamar wa yedei inyan kosis shebizman agolos, that in order to come to a revelation of the essence of the soul, it's through the crushedness in the time of golos. Why does the Rebbe explain that? And this is going to be explained in Vav, in Zion, okay? Ki ikar hagilui detzem in the shama ma'or, the essential revelation of etzem in the shama ma'or, hu binyan mesiras nefesh. When we talk about the revelation of etzem in the shama, that goes hand in hand with what you and I call mesiras nefesh, and we see the clearest example and clearest expression of the revelation of etzem in the shama in mesiras nefesh. Self-sacrifice. Jews are willing to give up their life for the Eibishter. They can't live without the Eibishter. They might not have been willing to live without the Eibishter, but they live with the Eibishter, but they can't live without him. So they're willing to give up their lives if push comes to shove. Okay. That's the most powerful expression of it. Now, are there other expressions of it? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. There's Mesiras Nefesh that isn't necessarily giving up your life. Right? There's Mesiras Nefesh that's just acting in a way that everything the person does is an expression of their essential connection to the Eibishter. Right? It refers to Mendel as a Mesiras Nefesh Dike Yid. Right? Mendel walking around Kfar Chabad looked like he was in the Gulag in Russia. There's no difference. Also what he was wearing. Be wearing some heavy Russian coat and a cap and big boots. It's like 4,000 degrees out. Walking around, it's still Russia.
Rabbi, are we saying that Moshe allows for the connection of Kusis Lamor to the Sirius Nefesh?
No, we didn't say that yet. We might later, but we didn't yet. The Rebbe simply explained that the reason that the Frierdiker Rebbe explains Kosis Lamar after Raya Mehemne, because Raya Mehemne is that Moshe connects us to Etzem and the Neshama. And the most powerful and essential revelation of Etzem and Neshama is Mesiras Nefesh. So after talking about Moshe connecting us to the essence of our soul, the Rebbe talks about Mesiras Nefesh. But he didn't yet connect it to Moshe Rabbeinu. He will, because interested we know what happened through Mordechai. But we also have to understand that why? What's Moshe got to do with that? Okay. Now we got up to where we got up to. Yay. Okay.
Wow.
Va'inyan hu. What one thing that you might want to do, that when you learn a mimer, right? And this is why if you learn it once, you don't know it. If you learn a mimer, once you've learned the mimer and you've gone over it again, so they do this while you're learning the mimer, and then close your eyes and do it without the mimer in front of you. What does Ois Aleph talk about? What does Ois Beis talk about? What does Ois Gimel talk about? What does Ois Dalet talk about? In one line, not right? In one line. Right? Rav Yoel used to get all upset at the fact that Israeli Bachrim at their bar mitzvah say over the bar mitzvah mimer Baal Peh in Lashon HaKodesh, word for word in what's written in the book. It used to drive him crazy. Right? He says that's not chazering a mimer. What's chazering a mimer? Now, in America, so they'll say it over in, not so much anymore, but in the old days, they'd say it over in Yiddish. So now the mimer is printed in Hebrew, so you can't say it word for word if you're saying it over in Yiddish. That means you have to explain the mimer as you're saying it over. That's the way it should be done. Now, that's hard to do if you're saying it over in modern Hebrew, because the mimer is written in Lashon HaKodesh, and modern Hebrew is pretty close to Lashon HaKodesh. And so it's very hard not to say the words that are written on the page, right? As opposed to your own words. Well, I mean, it's the same word. So it's hard to chazer a mimer in modern Hebrew without just sort of falling upon saying what's written beferish on the page in Lashon HaKodesh, which is hard to do. It's easier to do it in English, and it's easier to do it in Yiddish. Because then by definition you can't say the words on the page, so you have to explain the mimer. But we all used to complain about the fact that Israeli Bachrim say it Baal Peh instead of having to ultimately understand it so they can explain it in another language. Right? Now, when you write your synopsis of an ois, it better be one line. If it's not, that you don't understand the ois. Right?
Now what we do in America is just do it with Yiddish by heart.
Yeah, so people, right, there's a Yiddish translation and they just
That's what I did.
memorize the Yiddish. Okay, say them. Right. Still good. But it's better to be able, it would be, honestly, it would be better for that kid for whom Yiddish is not necessarily his mother tongue to say it over in English. Because then he has to say it. It's got to go into his head in order to say it over in English. Right? It does sound funny, though, my mom said over in English, but still, it's good. Seder. So, one line. I always remember a story. We had I don't remember his name. He was a doctor from Switzerland. He'd finished medical school in Switzerland. And then he came to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael to learn for a while. And he was a really interesting guy. I can see his face. I can't remember his name. So he told us a story that there he was, Central European medical school, all these people sitting in this big, huge room, and they have these seats that go up very, very steeply, so a lot of people can fit in a small space, because Switzerland's this small little country with a lot of people, and they jam them in there. So the professor is down there, and he's busy following the textbook as listening to the professor, and then the professor tells them to go read a certain couple of pages in the textbook, and the next day they come into class and he's read the pages, and he's those yellow markers that you can put over the line so you can see the words, right? So he's marked all the things that he thinks are important on the page, and it's basically every line on the page is marked, and he said there's one line unmarked, and he's sitting there waiting for the professor to start, and the professor says, there's one line on this page that everybody has to understand very clearly. And it's the one line that he didn't yellow. right? So he said the whole class, he's sitting there like this with his book like this, so the people behind him can't see his yellow page with that one line. That is the only line that mattered on the whole page. That was the line that he did not, what do they call it? Highlight, right? Okay. So you have to know what to say. You have to notice what's important. Okay, but that's how you learn things, right? I mean, what we were doing in the Gemara. If I can't say the question in the Gemara in one line, so I don't understand it, right? You should be able to do that in the Sugya. Right? The fact that the emunah of the Jewish people is in a way, a fashion, that the person will be willing to give up his life for it. Who be'ikr is essentially ba'amunah shemitzad etzem in the shama, which we've already said, but the other Rabbi says it because we want to understand something. That essentially is going to be a revelation of etzem in the shama. As we said, even seichel can bring a person to a state of mesiras nefesh. Certainly, a person can want to stay connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu enough that they're willing to give up their life. That's chaya sheba nefesh. But there's also the essential expression of mesiras nefesh is what's described in Chassidus, azoy v'nit andrish. This is the way it is, and there is no other way. Meaning to disconnect from the Eibishter is impossible for a Jew. Where does that come from? Etzem and neshama, right? Similar to someone saying to you, "I'll let you live if you let me cut off your head." That's not a very reasonable equation. It doesn't work. Right? There's no such thing. It doesn't go. Okay. I'll let you live if you disconnect from the Eibishter. You've shot it. That's etzem and neshama.
Sorry, what does the word tolkef mean?
Where?
Tolkef.
We haven't hit it yet.
Oh.
When we get there, we'll translate it. In one line. The emunah mitzad zeh. That the emunah mitzad zeh shu roya. The emunah that comes from the fact that he sees elokus, mazli chazi. Hagam, even though shu b'toikef gadol, even though it's very powerful. Kifut, right? Hatkafa, in modern Hebrew, is offense in soccer and war, right? Hatkafa. If you have the ball in soccer, you're b'hatkafa. Right? Just give it to Cruyff and let him do the rest. Okay. Right, Shalom? You see, Shalom? There's things I know, Baruch Hashem. I was taught by my very close Dutch friend. Hagam shehi b'teikef gadol, even though he is, it is very, very powerful. The emunah that comes from the fact that I see elokus, as the Rebbe said, ki yodua, and we talked about this already. The hisamsus. Okay, what's the 3-letter root of that word? No. Emes. Right. Emes. Hit tut. Verification. Right? Verite is truth in French. Right? Okay. Verify means to make sure that you understand that something is true. Okay. So verification. Hit tut. The making of its truth. Okay. The verification of something. Ki yadua shehit tut. The verification, shemitzad ha're'iyah, that comes as a result of seeing something, he's amsus gedol b'yes, is very, very powerful. As we talked about yesterday, seeing is believing. Very hard for you to convince me if I saw something. It's very hard for you to convince me that I didn't see it and it's not true. I mean, it's true. So and so's in town. No, he isn't. I saw him this morning. He's here. No, he's not in town. He's in Denver. No, I saw him. Look, I'm telling you, he's in Denver, right? Okay, now if you hook me up to a Zoom with him and he tells me he's in Denver, I'm still not going to be so sure that they're not pulling a fast one on me because I saw him this morning here and he couldn't have gotten to Denver in this time. Okay, that's Re'iyah. Now, it could be, as we talked about yesterday, that you convince me that I made a mistake when I thought I saw something that I didn't see. That can happen too. Right, no, it wasn't him. You thought it was him, it wasn't him. Did you talk to him? No, I just saw him walk by. Okay, well, maybe it's someone else. Okay, that could be. Because he tells me he's in Denver. I don't believe him. He walks outside and he shows me, I don't know, the Rocky Mountains over there, a little east or west, wherever they are of Denver. Right? West, I think, right? Okay, so I guess he's talking in Denver, so I guess I didn't see him today. Okay, fine. That can happen. But the fact that I think I saw him is very powerful. Mikol Makan, nevertheless, since this emunah is a function of a reason, something external, and what's that? Mitzad zeh that he saw. It's not connected to the essence of his being. It's not necessary. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's not necessary. That he'll give up his soul for this. That he'll give up his life for this. Why? Well, he might make a cheshbon. Can come to a certain cheshbon, right? He saw some godly revelation, and that godly revelation had to do with keeping the importance of keeping Shabbos. Okay, so obviously he's going to be pretty serious about keeping Shabbos, this guy, right? Because the Eibishter just appeared to him and told him to keep Shabbos. So wow, this is like pretty amazing. So he's going to be keeping Shabbos with a lot of energy, this guy, no question. Okay. All of a sudden, someone puts a gun to his head and says, "Be machal Shabbos." What cheshbon might he make? What might he say?
I can violate this one to keep more.
Exactly, right? Is he necessarily going to be Meiser Nefesh? No. Mitzad etzem and neshama? I can't separate from God. It's not happening. It's like saying, "Let me cut off your head and I'll let you live." That doesn't work. There is no such equation. All right? Let me beat you up and I'll let you live. Okay, so maybe that's a reasonable thing to do, because after all, I'll get better and I'll live. So as Shimon said. So, okay, I'll give up a Shabbos. I know how important Shabbos is. Adarabah, based on how important I know Shabbos is, because I had a godly revelation that told me how important Shabbos is, I'm going to be Machal this Shabbos so I can keep another 300. I could make such a cheshbon. Right? Now, if this is happening in public, that cheshbon is wrong, al pi shulchan aruch, right? You have to give up your life if this is happening in public. Okay. The story of Lubavitch in Russia was being Meiser Nefesh for things that you're not chayav to be Meiser Nefesh for. Right? Why? Azoy v'nit under. Right? And it wasn't just Lubavitchers in Russia. Ger Chasidim, it was a decree in Poland at a certain point against payas. You ever see Ger's payas? You see a Ger Chasid's payas? They're famous for their payas, Ger Chasidim. They don't hide them behind their ear. They don't roll them up. They're big, long, beautiful payas. The Ger Chasidim, okay? I think was it the Svassinis? Not sure. Might have been this Svassinis. Not sure which Rebbe it was. Told them they should be Meiser Nefesh. Because it's an ikaron in Yiddishkeit that they're trying to uproot and they're trying to disconnect you from the Eibishter. Not because payas is something, but this is an ikaron. What are they doing by saying this? They're trying to disconnect you from the Eibishter by virtue of taking control of you, by saying, I can control you more than your God does, to give up your life. Even though it's not on the list, those things you have to give up your life for. Svassinis might have been the Svassinis. The Svassinis is a little late. It might have been the Svassinis. I don't remember. Svassinis is the time of the Rebbe Shab.
And he was the Ger Rebbe at the time?
He was the Ger Rebbe at the time of the Rebbe Shab, like the turn of the century, from 18 to 19. Mm-hmm. Right, so if it's coming only from Mazli Chazein, and that which the emunah of the Jew is in an oifen, in a fashion, that he gives up his life, that's because that's because his faith, his connection, his belief in God is his essence. That's who he is. It's not something he does. It's not something he has. It's not a possession. It's his essential existence. A Yid is be'etzem connected to the Eibishter. That's who we are. We're a little chelik elokah mimal mamish. That's what a Yid is. It's not, emunah isn't what we have. It's who we are. And that, where does that come from? Etzem and neshama. Therefore, it's impossible that he will deny the existence of the Eibishter in any way, shape, or form. That's the most powerful and truest source of Mesiras Nefesh. Again, can Mesiras Nefesh come from other places? Absolutely. Right? So we said the non-Jewish soldier. It's Mesiras Nefesh. Absolutely, 100%. He's a very, very impressive guy. Okay. Why? Seichel. I'll explain to you. Right? Not that he's not a good guy. It's very impressive. But it's not coming from Etzem and the Shem. Doesn't have a Nefesh Elokis. Right? Does that mean he's a terrible person? Not a terrible person. He's a wonderful person. Very nice person. God created him. Thinks he's worth it. Okay. But he's not going to be Mesiras Nefesh from the Etzem and the Shem. Not going to happen. Right? It's not going to happen. Okay. So now the Rebbe is going to explain something quite astounding. Va'al pi zeh, based on what we just said, the difference between Mazli, Chazi, and Etzem and Neshama. Yesh levar ma shekosel b'maimer, we can now explain that which is written in the Maimer, Dezeh, Shemeshu Rai Mehemna, that which Meshu's Rai Mehemna, Shu Zanim Farneses Emuna, that he nourishes the Emuna, Hu Gam B'Negei L'Rei Yisrael Sheb'chol Dar, and this is also relevant to the shepherds of the Jewish people in every generation. Ispashtus of the Meshu's Sheb'chol Dar, the expression of Meshu in every generation, which we've already said. Shehem mechazki me'emunah Yisrael, that they strengthen the emunah of Yisrael. And what does that mean? They strengthen the emunah. Sheyamdu b'mesiras nefesh b'kiyum Torah mitzvahs. That they'll stand in a state of mesiras nefesh for the performance of Torah mitzvahs. Now, hopefully, we're in a situation where we don't have to be mesiras nefesh b'fayil mamish. We don't have to give up our lives. We, Baruch Hashem, are in a situation where we don't have to give up our lives for Torah and mitzvahs. Right? There are people who put their life on the line. They're called soldiers. Right, for the benefit of the Jewish people at large who are living here in this country. Okay, that's certainly true, right? But your average Jew does not have to be Mesiras Nefesh to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Very few Jews are living anywhere where you're not allowed to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Matter of fact, maybe no one, right? Even in Syria, as far as I know, the few Jews living there are allowed to keep basic Torah and mitzvahs. In Iran, they're definitely allowed to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Can't put an Israeli flag on their house, say that, but they're allowed to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Right? Keep Shabbos, eat kosher. Right? There's a shaliach of the Jews in Iran. He's not in Iran. He lives in Uzbekistan and somehow gets into Iran or sends stuff to Iran. I don't know exactly how he pulls this off. But Yiddishkeit is not forbidden in Iran. It's not to say they're nice people. They're horrible, terrible, wicked, evil people. But they express it in different ways. And not all of them are horrible, but just, the ones who run the place. Okay. So the ultimate expression of Raya Mehemna is that he brings the Yidden to Mesiras Nefesh. So that Mesiras Nefesh can be Mesiras Nefesh, that's conceptual Mesiras Nefesh. What's that? A Zoy v'nit andrish relative to every line in Shulchan Aruch. This is the way it is, and there is no other way, and the Jew makes sure that whatever has to get done in Yiddishkeit gets done. Right? It's not right? He's not volunteering. Right? Talk to a real soldier about people who volunteer for the IDF. Okay, he thinks they're cute. But does he take them seriously? No. Why? Well, they're not. They're volunteering. Volunteering is by definition the opposite of a soldier. The soldier doesn't volunteer. He has to do it whether he likes to or not, likes it or not. Well, not that it's a bad thing to do, but it okay, it's nice, it's sweet, it's cute, but it's not what a soldier is. Okay. What about a chassid who's a volunteer chassid? Huh? He volunteers to be a chassid, meaning when it's a nice thing to do, when it fits into his plan as to what his agenda is in life, it's nice. Good. I like it. It's cool. When it doesn't, the volunteer soldier is going to volunteer when it makes sense. Lefi, what's a good time in his college career or his business or whatever to go volunteer for IDF for 2 weeks and put on a green suit and run around and feel like macho. Right? It's nice. It's not real. Why? Well, because in 2 weeks he's going to go back and do his thing, and and he'll tell all his friends about it and have pictures. Oh my goodness, how many pictures did he put up on his Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is that he, spills and vomits himself all over in order for the whole world to see, right? Seems to be the way of life these days, which is bizarre. Look at me, look what I'm doing. Why does everybody care what you're doing? I mean, hopefully they're busy doing something themselves. Right? Okay, but we have this thing, right? So fine. So he puts that up and it's cool and it's great, but it's not real. Because volunteering isn't real. When is it real? When it's who I am. Right? And when I did basic training, so it wasn't very serious, right? Because I was an old guy, but relatively, right? But I mean, it is true. At least we talked to our officers who were like 20, 19, 20. We talked to them about their basic training, which was serious. So, what did they tell us about their basic training? And it would be so wonderful if we could do this in yeshiva, but we can't. It used to be. I mean, it's what the Rebbe Shab did in yeshiva. Right? But he said it's basically getting yourself to a point where you realize that if you have to do something, you can, and there's nothing stopping you. Whatever you have to do, you can do. So we said, okay. So they were intrigued by us. They were 19, 20. And they were intrigued. I was the second youngest guy. I was like 29. So, because it was all what's called Shlav Beit. It was all people who did Aliyah and then, showed up in the army later on in their life. So, so they were intrigued by us. They used to like to talk to us and ask us about life, and we'd ask them about army, and we had a good time. They were very, very, very nice kids. So we asked them, okay, so you learned how to do it. No matter what has to happen, it happens because there is no choice. The expression of that was a masa, a march from Yerushalayim to Hulon with all of their gear on their back at a slow trot, right? And the fat guys who couldn't do it were on stretchers and being carried intermittently by everybody else, right? Because if there's a fat guy, he's gonna die on the way, so they don't want him dying, so they just put him on a stretcher and make you carry him, right? Which I guess endears all the fat guys to everybody else. So that way he said, and so he said, in the middle you want to die. You just would rather die than take another step, but you just take another step, and then you realize that if you just can do anything that has to be done. So then we asked them the obvious question: so did that ever express itself in the army when you were actually not in basic training, when you were doing real stuff? So he said, yeah, we were in Lebanon, and we were under fire for 36 hours straight. We had to stay awake. You can't fall asleep when someone's shooting at you. It's a bad idea. You might not wake up. Right? So you have to sort of be aware. Say that staying awake for 36 hours straight is extremely difficult. He said, but we realized we had to do that and we had no choice, so we managed. So he said, personally, I remember this particular guy, right? See his face. Sweet looking guy, curly hair. He had the brown boots. He was son of an Indian. He had the brown boots. I always wanted the black boots. I like the black boots. Didn't like the brown boots. Right? So, but he had the brown boots. So I don't remember his name, but that was, he told us that was his particular, when he was with his buddy, who was another one of our officers. It wasn't officers, but guys who trained us. That's what they did. Okay, fine. So now, when Rav Nanas asked the Rebbe Rashab why life in Temple meaning is so hard, and we're being pushed to the limit, what was the Rebbe Rashab's answer? This is 1914, something like that. Right? This is I don't know, the Rebbe Rashab didn't use this word, but this is the word Rav Nanas used when he told me the story. This is your boot camp, and your difficult times are going to come, and you're going to have to be ready for the difficult times. Meaning you're going to have to be Mason Nefesh, because the Soviets are going to take over this country, and it's going to be really terrible. And it was. And Rav Nanas spent 20 years in Siberia and came out alive to tell the story. Not once in that 20 years was he Michal Shabbos. Once the book.
Oh,
Terribly written book, but an amazing book. His name in the book is Avram Netzach. His real name was Eliezer Navis.
Oh, okay.
When he says my father, he's referring to the Frierdiker Rebbe.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And the Rebbe told him to take out 1/3 of the stories because no one would believe them.
Wow.
That's 2/3. Those are the 2/3 least wild stories. The Rebbe said, don't put, no one will believe this if you write this. The Rebbe took out a bunch of the stuff. So no one will believe it.
Some of them are even wild.
Oh, the stories are they're off the wall. They're just crazy things, yeah.
Are there a place where the 33%?
I'm sorry?
Are there?
Oh, the 30, I don't know. He used to tell us stories all the time. I don't know whether they were that, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I don't think anybody wrote them down. But he had a pretty interesting life. Right? Made it through Stalin. Made it through 20 years in Siberia. One Pesach, he had no food. His wife used to send him matzahs. So they didn't let the matzahs go through. So he just fasted for 8 days. Drank water. He found a potato here and there or something, but he basically just didn't eat for it.
One time they were able to make matzah somehow.
Yeah.
Using potatoes.
It's crazy stories. Yom Kippur he spent in the cave, standing on that little shelf, davening. Crazy. Yeah. Well, Mendel tells a story that Shaykh to our mind. When Mendel was in Siberia, so he was in his bed, and one of the inmates, he was on his piece of wood, and one of the inmates was looking at him, and he was a little afraid because this guy was not in the camps because of Hafatzas and Mayanot of Chassidus. He wasn't spreading Chassidus. This guy was there because he probably murdered a few people. So Mendel was sort of scared of this guy. And he's looking at Rav Mendel, and then he starts walking towards Rav Mendel. So Mendel, he said vidui. He said what you say before you die, because he thought the guy might be coming to kill you. And the guy came up to him and said, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. This is what I did on Yom Kippur. I want to know if it's okay. So first he was like blown away. This guy's a Jew. What happened? What do you mean Yom Kippur? He said, well, last week I was walking by one of the factories on the edge of the camp. Now, the camp is 250,000 prisoners. So it's a city, right? And most of the factories of the Russian economy are in those cities. And who's working in the factories? The prisoners. So there's 20, the conservative account of how many people died up there is 20 million. Right? Solzhenitsyn claims 60 million. Okay, but the official count is about 20 million people died in those camps. That means there were tens of millions of people up there. And that was the whole Russian economy. It was run by the factories up there. So the Soviet economy. So whatever that, Soviet economy is a contradiction in terms, but whatever. So it's like military intelligence, right? They say that's a contradiction in terms. What does that mean, military intelligence?
Oxymoron.
It's an oxymoron, military intelligence. So Soviet economy. He said he was walking by one of the factories and there were two Jews standing outside and one whispered to the other, Yom Kippur's Wednesday. How do you know when Yom Kippur is, right? It's not like, you look it up on your cell phone in your, Hebrew calendar app, right? How do you know when it's Yom Kippur if you're in Siberia? So the word would get around. Actually, someone would find out. So he said, Yom Kippur is Wednesday. So he heard this guy. He said, I heard it. So I figured, must be I should keep Yom Kippur. This is God's way of telling me I should keep Yom Kippur this year. So he told Mendel, he said, for me to say that I'm sick on Wednesday is no big deal, right? I mean, they don't think I'm sick because it's Yom Kippur. If you say you're sick on Wednesday, they know it's Yom Kippur, and they know that that's why you're sick, and so they'll make you go to work, but not me, right? So I said I didn't feel well. And I laid in bed all day, and I didn't eat. Yeah, so far so good, Mendel said. He said, well, but I want to know, I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to pray. I know there's a lot of prayers on Yom Kippur, but I didn't know how to pray. So I just said over and over, the only thing I could remember, I remember my father told me that when you wake up in the morning, you say, Meida ani lefenecha melech hai v'kayim shechazarti v'nishmasi b'chemla rabbe emunasecha. So I remember my father told me that. So I just said that over and over and over all day because that's the only thing I knew. Is that okay? So Randall looks at it. It's okay. Like, wow, is that okay? Right? A Jew is a mamin ben mamin. This mimer, that's a yid. He's a murderer who's in the Russian gulag, right? And Mendel Mamish thought he was coming to kill him. What happened? This Jew hears it's Yom Kippur. Oh, it's Yom Kippur. Hashgacha pratis. I guess I'm supposed to keep Yom Kippur. That's a yid. Okay, let's go one more line in the mimer, and then we'll pick it up tomorrow. So the Rei Yisrael are the ones who bring the Yidden to a state of Mesiras Nefesh. Dil L'cha'ura. Let's just see this line. We'll have to deal with it at length tomorrow. That which Mesha nourishes the Amunah, who can mavur become a makemis v'gam b'maimer zeh atzma. That's brought in a number of places. If you look, this is very interesting actually. Look at footnote 34. It's a very interesting footnote. Torah or mishpatim. So the source of this is the Alter Rebbe. Who become a makemis and other places in the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. Another Rebbe says something very U're'ei gam Tanya Reish Perak Membe. Look in Tanya also. What's the also? I mean, if it's there, it's there, and if it's not there, it's not there. It's also the same person who wrote the previous source, Torah. So why is it also? So that happens very interesting. If you look in Tanya over there, in Torah, what's it talking about? That the Raya Mehemna is the one who brings the Jewish people to a state of Mesiras Nefesh. That's what it's talking about. Over there, and through bringing Emunah into Das, right? Which is what we're going to say, right? But in Tanya, it's talking about the Raya Mehem, the bringing Emunah into Das, not relative to Mesiras Nefesh, but relative to Yiras Shamayim. So it's also, that's why it says Gam. But also in Tanya, you'll see the same thing, but you won't see it in exactly the same context. In Torah, or this is the source of that is mamish the source of what I'm about to say to you right now. That's the source, Torah, saying exactly the same thing. Tanya isn't saying the same thing. It's talking about the same general idea, the Raya Mehemna bringing Emunah into Das. Okay, but over there it's talking about Yiras Shamayim. Avodah. And in Torah it's talking about Mesiras Nefesh. It's just interesting. That little gum there. It's also brought by the Frierdiker Rebbe in his mimer. Al yedei shemashpia liyisrael das be'elukus. He gives over to the Jewish people das be'elukus. Now we don't know what this. We know what das means. Das means internalization. Okay, but I mean we know already. So what have we said here that's new? We'll see it. We'll see it tomorrow. We'll see the what we have to understand. We'll read it now, and then we'll have to understand it tomorrow because we won't understand it yet. Moshe gives over to the Jewish people something called das, that as a result of that, the emunah comes into Pnimius. How that works, I don't know at this point. That which the shepherds of the Jewish people in every generation, they strengthen the emunah of the Jewish people. Hamavur b'maimer zeh, like that which is explained in this mimer. Hu she'emunah d'Yisrael tiyeh ba'ofen d'Mesiras Nefesh. That is such that the emunah will be b'Mesiras Nefesh. That's the connection of Kosis Lama'or to Raya Mehemna. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu is mashpia das to the Jewish people. Whatever that means, and however that expresses itself, we don't know yet. So don't ask, right? That we don't know yet. We'll see. The Rebbe's going to explain that to us. And that brings about an internalization of the emunah, which results in Mesiras Nefesh if necessary. Okay, yafeh. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Is mashpia das. Okay? And when I'm reading the mimer, I'm learning a mimer, this mimer, any mimer, and I come across a line like that, I say, okay, I get the equation, I don't know what it means, I do not look up and start guessing. Irrelevant. Right? Keep learning the mimer. and realize you have an issue that you hope the Rebbe is going to explain to you in the continuation of the Maimer. It might be the next line, it might be 5 pages later, but you have this issue that you don't understand. So, make a note of it and say, okay, I don't understand what that means, Mashpia Das. Is the Rebbe going to explain it here? If at the end of the Maimer you see no explanation, so then you either, go to ask someone, wait, the Rebbe talked about Mashpia Das. What does that mean? Where can I find something on that? Or the Rebbe's going to explain it in a couple of lines, which he will. Okay? But I don't look up and start guessing. It's just not reasonable. Right? Because Chassidus matters. Torah matters. I don't guess about things that matter. I would assume you hope that when you go to a doctor, if he doesn't know what the issue is, he doesn't start guessing. Right? Oh, maybe this. It could be this. It's a good idea. I don't know anything about this, but who knows? I once heard I had a lecture once in medical school, and maybe it's that. You really do hope that he doesn't do that. And I would assume that's your body, right? So and I would assume that if you were talking to some investment advisor about what to do with, some money that you have on the side and how to make it work for you best, and he would say, look, I don't really know, but maybe this might be a good idea. What do you say about this? You'd probably say, well, maybe I'll go to someone else. Okay, so don't do that to Torah. Torah is at least as important as the doctor and the investment advisor. So don't guess. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have a question. The question's a good question. I don't understand this. I don't know what it means. Okay, let's figure it out. Let me see. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
The
you.
Rebbe's about to say, tomorrow, first thing, an incredible chiddush in the Union of Ryan. It's not said anywhere.
That's
No, it's what's it called? YouTube. The yeshiva asked me to do this. I say that every time because I'm embarrassed that I'm